What is up, guys? What's up, Ray? Oh, look, we have the 3-camera view today. Special guest Mike is joining us. You've heard Ray and I talk the past few weeks. So today we thought you'd hear a different voice, and one that has been around in the Top Shot world well before we were. I think, Ray, you and I joined from the Bales tweet, the Ja Morant 35,000 purchase. And, we've talked about it before. I immediately made fun of it because I didn't understand it. And that's what humans do. They make fun of things they don't understand. Since then, I have over 100 plus moments that I've been buying up over time. And but let's jump right into it, Mike. So you joined in September 2020, back when, I think it launched at the end of July. So really like a month or two into the project, you got wind of this, you jumped into it. You've been featured in a number of like high profile interviews. Why don't you walk us through that? Like tell the story about how Top Shot came to be, and what interested you and what made you love it so much.
For sure. So first, thank you for having me on. I appreciate you guys taking the time with me today on Easter Sunday, and happy Easter to you guys. So as you say, I came across Top Shot in September of last year, and it's a pretty basic story. I was browsing Twitter. It was halfway through at this point, the pandemic, and spending a lot more time indoors than I normally would be, browsing online, looking for things to do. And I came across a tweet about a new NBA product, which was NBA digital collectibles. And so my experience at that point on both the crypto side of things and the collectible side of things was fairly limited. I've owned cryptocurrency since 2017, but just in a buy and hold sense. I've never really done anything with it. I've barely kind of scratched the surface of the potential of crypto, but I've owned Bitcoin and Ethereum since 2017. And on the collectibles side of things, I can't say I'm a big collector in general. I did sports cards growing up. I did... I didn't do Beanie Babies. I didn't really do Pokemon cards. I didn't do too much of that. In my adult life, what I do is with a friend of mine from high school, we go to different baseball stadiums each year, and we go for bobblehead games. And so we're trying to hit every stadium over the next few years. We've hit, I think, 13 or 14 so far, and we are considering either Atlanta or Kansas City for a May trip this year.
Kansas City would welcome you.
Yeah. So Matt, in answer to your question, so I came across this tweet. At that point, it wasn't open to the public. So I signed up for early access, hoping to be let onto the platform in October when they moved from closed beta to open beta. And then I got a little impatient. So I DM'd their Twitter account, the NBA Top Shot Twitter account, which at the time had, 5 or 10,000 followers. It was a fairly lightly followed account, and said, hey, can I get on the early invite list? And they said, sure, follow up with us on Monday. So I did, and I joined the platform, and I had no idea what I was getting into. I didn't know much about it. I didn't know. I actually had never had a Discord account before then. I was like very, very early stage here across the board. And so I joined the Discord. I went onto the website. I saw you could buy a pack. So the first thing I did was I bought a $20 pack, which was a Throwdowns pack. And my rare was a Montrezl Harrell card or moment. And I looked around, I chatted with a bunch of people. The early adopters sort of explained to me what this is, what I'm doing here, what the appeal of the platform is. I did some independent reading. I saw that Dapper has an affiliation and investment from Aaron Gordon, JaVale McGee, Spencer Dinwiddie, and a number of other NBA players. They have an official NBA license. They have backing from Union Square Ventures and Andreessen Horowitz. And probably most importantly, I found that I myself was on the website and the Discord for 3 to 4 hours a day, looking through the marketplace, looking for opportunities, trying to understand the challenge dynamics, trying to understand the information that can be gleaned from the blockchain. And it was a very, very limited form of the platform we know and love today. You actually couldn't see who owned each moment that was listed in the marketplace. There was zero withdrawal capability. No one could withdraw. And there were probably 500 to 1,000 users. So every sale that was over $50 was like big news. Everyone would talk about it in the Discord. And I kind of looked at my own case and I said, I'm not a big collectibles person, as I mentioned. I'm not a huge crypto person, and yet I was able to figure out how this platform works and fall in love with this particular collectible. And I think this is going to be the story for many, many, many people. It's accessible, it's easy, it's fun, it's at your fingertips on your phone or your computer. So I think this could be big. And so I was excited as a collector, I was excited as an investor, and I went pretty aggressively into it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So much to unpack in that thing, and we're going to talk about a lot of that actually in today. How many bobbleheads do you currently own? That's the most important question.
So I have probably 15 from games that I've been to. So I live in New York. I have a few, probably 15 to 20 in that range. I have a few extra from the Mets and Yankees, and then one each from probably 12 or 13 other stadiums. And since I've started collecting those, other people have given me bobbleheads for games that I haven't attended for my birthday and things like that from other teams and players that I like. And actually, my sister's got me a bobblehead of me at one point. So I've got a bobblehead of me in a suit that sits on my office desk.
That's awesome. So I think we talked about this a little bit before, but like your big thing is like you want to actually attend the game to collect the bobblehead, not just get them, correct?
Yeah, exactly. In some ways, the bobblehead itself is almost incidental. It's fun. It's enjoyable. I put them up in my office on a shelf just above my computer. But what I like to do is kind of visit different parts of the U.S. with my friend. Go and hit the best bar, the best restaurant, the best strip where there are fun bars to bounce around to and sports bars. See the stadium itself. We park in our seats for the first 3 to 4 innings. Walk around for a couple innings, go check out the fun ballpark food, any other kind of fun things at the stadium that they have, get to know the local area. And that's a big part of the appeal.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Do you like specifically, and we'll hop to Top Shot, relax if you're watching and want Top Shot data. But for those that don't know, Add More Fun started off as a baseball site. Like we were a baseball tool. That was our first tool, was a baseball tool. Primarily baseball fans for the first year or two. And then we slowly ventured into NBA tools, NFL tools, and now Top Shot tools. But so the MLB talk fascinates me. I love MLB. I love that, the game could change in one pitch like that. That's just what I love about the sport. Do you go for specific players, or are you not that focused on the players, just more the bobblehead for that night?
So our process is basically at the beginning of each baseball season, we sit down in front of a calendar and we isolate for the teams we haven't been to. And then we write down in the calendar every bobblehead game for those teams in the season. And then we identify what weekends work for us. And then among those, which players we like. So the player, I guess, is theoretically the last aspect of it, but we probably wouldn't do a trip for a player we didn't actually want.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So just some full disclosure on the Kansas City baseball stadium, Kauffman Stadium's kind of in the middle of nowhere. The stadium experience is awesome. A lot of good food, good Kansas City barbecue. But when you're looking for the best bars, you're going to have to make either the night before or the night of a night out of it. Head downtown probably.
How far is it from downtown to the stadium?
It's probably 5 miles, 15 minutes.
Oh, that's it sounds very similar to Milwaukee, actually. Milwaukee is a similar sort of situation where the stadium itself is probably 15 minutes out of town in the middle of nowhere, but you're not too far from downtown.
Yep.
Cool.
One last question on the bobbleheads, and then we'll jump into it.
Yes,
how
sir.
Many, is there a goal of a specific amount per year that you're trying to get?
So the most we've done in a given year that kind of fit the mold of a different city is 2. And actually we had a fun one where we did Chicago and Milwaukee in one swing. We got Joe Madden, the manager for the Cubs, on a Saturday, I think it was. Then we took a train to Milwaukee on Sunday morning and got Carlos Gomez, I think, robbing a home run over the outfield wall. So that one aligned pretty well, but I wouldn't say there's a goal. I mean, we'd like to hit every stadium over time. As I said, we're in New York, so we've kind of started. We've drawn circles around New York and see what's within range, and we did a few driving ones. We did Boston, which is pretty easy. We did Philly by driving, and then we've flown to a bunch. But we're going to try to do a West Coast swing at some point where we hit like 3 or 4 if we can. But the schedules don't always work out that well.
Yeah. All right, so let's jump into it here. First off, if you're watching and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. We're trying to get the YouTube channel growing with our site and Twitter all in one. So subscribe, and I guess as other shows say, smash that like button. So you mentioned in your first foray into Top Shot, like you had done some crypto with Bitcoin and Ethereum since 2017. But like one of the topics that came up, and so Duncan's World _ on Twitter actually had this question, but it was, I generalized this statement, like NFTs, how do you separate the shit from the legit, right? Like what was your process going through that? And how do you identify now, like, seems like everyone's turning things into NFTs now. And it reminds me, so I'm from digital marketing. It reminds me of the .com boom, right? Like a majority of those were complete garbage projects, riding on the coattails of actual successful projects. So what are you doing right now? Cause like, I'm looking at all these different things. Like I'm a sports guy, so I'm trying to stay focused, but I really want a digital pony. I think that's a cool project, and I want to own a Zed-Run horse, or however it's referred to. Like my wife rolled her eyes when I told her this, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like I can race them. And she's like, oh boy, so you're going to lose a ton of money racing digital horses, huh? So how do you, like, what's your process? Like, what do you look for in a project? Is it utility? Is it the backers? Is it the community? Like, what's the number one thing you look for?
So I'd say for the first probably 3 months I was dabbling in this world, I was almost exclusively Top Shot. And part of the reason is the NFT world at large isn't too dissimilar from the art world at large, where if I walk into an art gallery and I look at a piece of art and I say, I think this is an interesting piece of art. I like this. I don't have the faintest idea what it will cost, what it should cost, what I'm willing to pay for it. And it almost becomes a game of how the person at the gallery represents the price to me as to whether or not I think that's a good deal. And I think a lot of those principles kind of apply in NFT world and collectible world in general. It's, how do you assign a value to these? The only way to monetize it going forward, there's never going to be cash flows. There's never going to be dividends. There's never going to be anything aside from either your personal enjoyment of it, your legacy, passing it down to your family, or someone else buying it from you. And so, the question is, how do you value something like that? And where does utility come into it? Because maybe in the digital space here, it does have a bit of a difference from sports cards or from actual art. And so I spent a lot of time kind of looking around and looking for different opportunities to participate in a relatively low risk way. And so I don't know if you guys have tried this out, but on Nifty Gateway, for example, they often have $1 drops where it's either a drawing, which means that as many people as they want can kind of enter a lottery for a $1 drawing. And then let's say it's 100 editions of a drawing. They will randomly select 100 people to then sell the piece of art to for $1. If you didn't get picked, you get your dollar back. So it's a free option effectively. Oh. So that's something that's available. And artists do that to kind of generate attention and to kind of give back to the fans, an opportunity for fans to get a piece of their art without spending 5 figures or more. But actually that's a relatively new concept. The way they used to do it is they used to release, let's call it 100 editions of the same piece for $1, but it was just a race, a first come, first serve. And so I participated in a few of those in the fall and winter of last year as just kind of, okay, let me check this out. If I get one, great, it costs $1. If I miss, it didn't cost me anything except for a few minutes of my time. And I was fortunate enough to get a Beeple piece actually in December for literally $1. And so that was actually, I believe, the first or second piece of digital art I actually bought. And so then I started kind of looking into the world a little bit more. And the way I decided to approach it was, and this is much more of an art than a science, is try and fast forward, let's call it 10 or 15 years. What's going to matter and why? And I tried to separate, is it just purely aesthetically attractive to me? I think, again, going back to the real art world, I think I have all the respect in the world for these people because I couldn't possibly do it. But there are lots and lots and lots of people who can paint a beautiful picture. And that doesn't make the picture worth that much money necessarily. it might be something that's worth buying for yourself if you enjoy it, but it may not be critically acclaimed or may not make its way into a museum. And it's really, really hard to differentiate that. And so, when you look at the NFT art worlds, the way I try and think of it is you have one of two options. Either you can kind of tail and follow established artists, and those are the people who we've all seen in headlines: the Beeples, the Trevor Jones, the Ferocious, all these kinds of artists that are up and coming and who are part of physical NFT displays and physical galleries in the world. They're having one in Shanghai. They've got a gallery down in New York City now, in downtown New York. And the artists who are being featured there. If you think about the real art world, the big names, the Jeff Koonses of the world, what he's actually producing almost doesn't matter at this point. His art is now valuable. He's kind of across the threshold where he's now a valuable artist, an appreciated artist. And so from a safety standpoint and from an appreciation standpoint, I think your safest bet is going with those kinds of people. The alternative is to take a number of shots at unknown artists that could become a big thing. And whether that is someone like Tommy Wilson, for example. Tommy Wilson is a minor league baseball player in the Mets system who does a lot of digital sports NFTs. And he's someone whose art has done pretty well, not incredibly well, pretty well, who is a talented guy. His art's fun, especially for a sports fan. And he's got a cool story. He's a minor league baseball player. He's in the system. He's doing that at the same time as he's an artist. And so, maybe that catches on. So you can take a few chances of that. And if one of these guys hits it big and gets it big and becomes the next Beeple, you've done really well. And if not, you haven't risked that much. And so in general, that's been my approach. I have not spent that much on any piece of art, with one exception, which I can go into, but I'm conscious of our end goal here to talk more about Top Shot. In general, aside from one piece of art, I haven't spent very much on any digital art, and that's because I'm very nervous that I don't know what will win out in the end, and I'm very conscious of the fact that here we are a few months into NFTs being a worldwide phenomena, and there is a ton of supply on the way. And I don't know what it is, something like 0.01%, 0.1% of the NFT art that will exist over the next 5 to 10 years is currently in existence. And people will only learn and grow from what exists today and what's been successful and mimic it. So It's really hard to know what actually wins and where it goes. The one place where I have actually, go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say, for me, I've never been an art collector. So collecting digital art is a foreign concept because I haven't collected physical art, right? I don't collect that. The only thing physical I collect is whiskey. And so I collect whiskey, but that's because I'll drink my whiskey, but there are some bottles I don't open. I have a 2012 20-year Pappy that just continues to appreciate in value. And it's well, at this point, if I want to drink a 20, do I want to open this? Cause it's going to be worth $5,000 probably in a few years versus the $2,000 it was worth, a year ago. And it just continues to accelerate. My wife collects Ray Dunn stuff. You can see the Easter display in the background behind me. That's her thing. So for me, it's it's hard to digital art. It's what am I going to do with it? So I haven't jumped into it, but where I do see some opportunity is I know sneakers are a big collectible market, and tying those with NFTs for authenticity and proving provenance on where that shoe came from and whether it's a legit, shoe or not for some of those rare collectibles, I think is a really interesting approach to some NFTs to help prevent fraud. And I don't know. So maybe I'm trying to think too literally about applying NFTs to physicals, and they don't obviously always have to. But even Top Shot in a way is still tracked back to a physical moment, right? Something physically happened that created that moment. And there's some, emotion behind why people might want that moment. So same thing with art, right? I know some people art speaks to them. They want this piece, your chandelier. If you turn that into an NFT, I'm sure 100 people would probably buy that. But
I think it helps for adoption to be able to tie it back to something that you've either been involved with before, or at least you can understand. Because if we're honest with ourselves, the NFT thing at first can be a difficult concept to grasp for some people, right? That's why we make fun of it or kind of poo-poo it on its way in.
So my view on this. I got pretty comfortable with this whole concept of the lack of a physical object or anything really except for what you see on your computer screen when I first got into Bitcoin. When I first heard about it, I wasn't convinced, but I watched a lot of documentaries about it. I read a lot of articles, watched YouTube videos, read blog posts, all kind of understanding the value proposition and what it brings to the table. And a big part of that messaging is kind of disentangling the physical value from an asset value. And does it need to have a physical component to be valuable? And so I did speak to a lot of friends and colleagues about Bitcoin and just trying to convey to them this point that it's effectively, once you get beyond the absence of a physical manifestation of it, it's just a better version of gold. And I think in Top Shot's case in particular, I think Top Shot's just a better version of physical cards. I think art is a bit of a different case where I think a lot of the value comes from your ability to share and display it. A lot of people have pointed to the fact that if you have a physical piece of art, you get to share it with your friends for the 2 hours a year they're in your home, as opposed to meeting in public places or you meeting in their home. Whereas for digital art, it's available 24/7 for people to appreciate and see, and for you to flex and peacock and all these sorts of things that people like to do with their collectible items. And I think that's an extremely important thing. And I think just macro level, as the world moves more digital and as we move more towards the oasis from Ready Player One and metaverses and things like that, this is what people are going to value. People are going to think it's, at some point, I think it's quite possible people think it's silly to have physical art on your wall that you paid any substantial amount of money for, because we live in a digital world and people spend so little time exploring the physical world.
Yeah.
So I think
sure.
the blockchain is an important piece to this. And you mentioned Bitcoin. It's where I think Top Shot maybe has an advantage beyond the NBA is you can transact in dollars. And you mentioned, the Nifty Gateway project. When you mention those items, you mention them in terms of dollars. Are those transactions you can make in dollars, or are you converting over to Ethereum or Bitcoin or what?
Yeah, and Nifty Gateway specifically, you can use a credit card to make purchases. And I do think that's an extremely important aspect of Top Shot. It's a very easy bridge for mainstream to enter crypto world. And one of the things we often debated in the early days of Top Shot is, how should Top Shot be kind of marketed and presented to new users? Is it attractive that it's blockchain backed in the sense that it's verifiable ownership and scarcity, that's obviously appealing? Or does it scare people off and they say, okay, the word blockchain is in here, I feel like there's a huge learning curve, this is not for me? And my view was always the latter, where what I found appealing of it was that it's super easy. I just put down a credit card and I can buy a digital moment and enjoy it as a sports fan. This is a cool highlight. It's part of my collection now. I can make a showcase out of it. I can send a quick link to my buddy and say, hey, look what I got. And the blockchain part is a nice behind the scenes thing that is cool to verify ownership, but I don't need to hear about the piping and the sausage making.
Pay $150 in gas for a $1.
That's a messy prospect. The other, so in more of a global answer, Matt, to your question of kind of how I think about NFTs now, the big thing is kind of what, again, matters long term and what has a story that carries through long term. So the only two places I've really parked significant capital, and I guess I'll pause for a standard disclaimer. We're talking about a lot of stuff that I own already. I'm hoping this isn't coming off as pumping bags. I own lots of Top Shot moments. I own lots of other NFT stuff. And so do your own research, take everything I say with a grain of salt, knowing I own it. And yes, I would benefit if you buy anything that I talk about or anything really in the NFT space. Okay, continuing. The other project that I think checks a lot of the boxes for me that I think 5 to 10 years down the line will matter, everyone will know it, everyone will recognize it, is CryptoPunks. And the reason I say that is it's the first, at least recognized NFT on the Ethereum blockchain where, not to get too technical, but before what's known as the ERC 721 token standard existed, which is basically how most NFTs are made, everything was on the ERC 20 token standard, which meant all tokens would be fungible. But these two developers basically used that token standard, modified it to create CryptoPunks. And that's a story for another day how they actually did it. But basically, CryptoPunks were 10,000 each unique avatar-looking pixelated figures that most people watching probably know about today. But conventionally, they're viewed as the first NFT ever on the Ethereum network, and what pioneered the development of the ERC 721 standard, which is basically what NFTs are today. And so in many ways, CryptoPunks pioneered the whole NFT industry. And so as long as I believe in the NFT industry and think it'll continue to grow and do well and become more popular, I think CryptoPunks are a great place to go. And no matter what comes after, no matter what supply comes on, no matter what celebrities join, no matter what great artists join, CryptoPunks will always be first and most important and kind of the spawn of the revolution. And so I feel comfortable with that story and that story carries through over time. And there's no risk of any headline risk where an artist, if he turns out to have been a criminal in his past, or some negative commentary comes out that it hurts his value. There's no individuals there. It's completely decentralized. And so I think it's a very low risk project, although that, along with Top Shot and other markets, has had some pain recently. And so nothing's a guarantee, but I feel good about that project and I feel good about Top Shot personally.
I think and we'll jump into Top Shot, and I think there's a good question here that kind of segues into some stuff. For me, the hard part, like the barrier to entry, like CryptoPunks seem extremely expensive for the common person, and so like unless you were in it in the beginning, it's not attainable. And a lot of that talk has translated into Top Shot. Top Shot has been quoted saying like they want a low level of entry for collectors to be able to come in and buy a moment. And that bull run back at the end of February certainly put a lot of things out of reach. Now we're starting to see the market settle back down. And we'll jump into that in just a second, but I'm going to put another link. We are going to do some giveaways for AMF subscription packages since gifting is not available right now. So we'll do like a few monthly and one annual subscription to the site. We'll give it away to the users in the chat. I'm going to put a link in there right now. But the question that came up that I was looking at was, and I'm not going to try to pronounce your name because I don't want to butcher that name, but trying to find a good balance between being a Top Shot collector and having moments that will have value long term. This isn't directly related to the next topic on market cap, but I think it's a good segue to get into that NBA Top Shot talk. So I guess like for you, Mike, like are you looking at it from like value long term to where you can retire from this? Or are you holding these and passing them on to your kids? And like is it something that you know how like my dad gave me a box of cards, when I was little and said he had these cards. And it's like, is that the play here? Is it to continue to transition these moments? Or is it, at some point there's going to be a little bit of, cash withdrawal for your investment to get some money back out of it? Like we all have to live. We all have to, earn a living. So like, I think this is a good question between being a collector and having moments that will have value long-term that you can do things with. Like, what's your take?
So I would say I have a few different answers to it. So first, in terms of kind of one of your last questions of will I liquidate at some point in some capacity, I think that I never really foresaw my initial investment growing to the size that it has today. Even after the market dip, it's still up, a significant amount, a life-changing amount of money at this point. And so, even though I enjoy my collection as a collector, I want to pass them on to my family, I envision doing so. I think it's irresponsible for me from a portfolio standpoint, from a nest egg standpoint, from an investment standpoint, for me to not take some action at some point to kind of add some, diversify my portfolio. And right now, Top Shot makes up a huge portion of my portfolio. And, it's difficult because I don't want to sell anything. I remain extremely confident in the platform. I don't have any plans to sell anytime soon, but it's hard for me to say that I'm not selling anything for the next 10 years. I'd imagine that as family events come up, as home buying comes up, a car buying, paying for things in the future, unexpected medical expenses, it's hard to justify not taking any cash off the table. So at some point I'll have to. But, in answer to the question, I would say I've approached it a few ways. Early on, there was definitely aspects of looking for moments that I like as a fan, and some of those in particular were, the Vince Carter last shot of his career. He's got a base and a cosmic version. That for a long time, I don't want to upset anyone, but for a long time was sitting in the marketplace for $2 to $3, and it's because it had a much bigger edition size than anything else at the time. There's over 3,000 of those moments, and when that was in circulation, most other moments had around 1,000 at most. And so people were like, there's too many, this Vince Carter. A lot of packs you would open would have a Vince Carter, and people would say, this is a free $2 or $3. Why not? I'll sell it. And for me, Vince Carter is a guy who I had posters of him on my wall growing up. Obviously, he's got his storied NBA career. It spanned 4 decades, and the play itself was a really incredible NBA moment. And so I always collected that one as a fan. And I've got a lot of those base moments and a few of the cosmic moments too. And that one happened to back into a financial success. On the financial side of things, though, there's definitely an element. And I think that it's idealistic and a little bit almost purist for us to sit here and say we shouldn't think about the financial side of things, because it's a lot of fun to buy something for $20. You look up 3 weeks later and it's worth $50. No matter what that is, that's a fun thing to be a part of. And so that was definitely a part of my experience too, where I was in a number of group chats with friends where we would kind of think about, especially from the challenge side of things, is this a good financial play? Let's run some numbers here. What do we think this is all going to be worth after the challenge? What do we think the reward could be worth? What's the probability we pull an attractive serial number here? Does this make financial sense? And we wouldn't look at the plays. We wouldn't look at the teams. We wouldn't look at anything else except for, does this make financial sense? And so I would say there's a little bit of both sprinkled into my collection and into the platform itself, where there are definitely going to be Pistons fans who target Pistons moments, even if they're not a good financial buy. And then there are going to be people who only say, I only want Kevin Durant moments because they're relatively scarce to most players of his caliber. And I don't want Giannis moments because the market's flooded with those, and I think that'll catch up over time. And I'm looking at this purely from a financial standpoint. And so I think it's part of the attractiveness of the platform. There's both sides.
How do you balance that, looking at something to say, okay, is this a value in relation to a challenge expiring in a week, or is it a value compared to a month or a year, or we keep talking about the 10 to 15 year time horizon. Those are all very different questions, right?
Yeah, so I think day trading anything is extremely difficult. I think there's friction in terms of transaction costs, selling and buying fees. I think there are tax implications. Here's the question. I believe in short-term trading on NBA Top Shot. I think you can be successful around challenges. I think just kind of timing the market is really, really difficult. You might be able to succeed in a given week or 2 weeks or something like that. But if you factor in, again, the transaction fees, the 5% selling fee every time, the brain damage of having to be like on top of your game at all times, and tax implications, I think that it's really hard to be successful financially and lifestyle-wise, where you're actually getting return for your time invested on it. And it's such an early stage market where my view on this, Ray, to your question is, not financial advice. Don't quote me on this. Don't pull anything out of context, please. My view is that I think that this is my kind of overarching thesis. This is a revolutionary product that is going to tap into physical card market, gaming market, metaverse world, crypto world, markets people, betting people. Like it hits so many different types of people, just collectors with their families who, just want to collect their local team, fans of a certain play, people who were at a certain game, and anything like that. It's such a wide addressable market. And then we haven't even touched on the geographic side of things, where there are tons and tons of NBA fans around the world who have limited access to memorabilia outside of something like Top Shot, where they just need their phone or computer to access it. And so I just think it's a completely revolutionary product with an enormous addressable market. And so I think, absent some very poor management from Dapper's side, or some issue with the NBA and Dapper where the license isn't renewed, or if the Flow blockchain underlying all of this has a massive failure or error or vulnerability, it's hard for me to imagine that it's not going to be successful going forward, and that's why I'm not too worried about kind of short-term fluctuations here. I think it's going to be one of those things where if you zoom out on the trajectory over a 10-year period, a dip like what we've seen over the last 2 or 3 weeks will be, inconsequential. It'll be something you can't even tell unless you zoom in pretty far. And that's why it's, you can look at my account. I've sold very, very few moments over time. I think my total sales are like something below 5 figures, with I think 95% of my sales being moments that are inactive challenges that I'm not completing. And I'm a little bit OCD with efficiencies, and so I can't handle holding a moment through a challenge that I'm not completing. I've got to do something with it, just because I know it's giving away value otherwise. And so
I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
I don't want to pop the question up, but there's a lot of chatter about withdrawals can't make money, quote unquote. But like, I have withdrawal capability. I have not made a withdrawal yet. Ray, I think you have withdrawal capability, but you have not made a withdrawal. It sounds like, Mike, you have not made a withdrawal yet either, or maybe
Correct.
You have.
No, I have not.
Okay. So, which I think is interesting. I do think wider access to withdrawals will solve a lot of issues. And so part of the
it's
potential
caused a lot of issues too, though, if you look at the short term of the market right now. I mean,
yeah. And so like the
dip.
market corrections, you could argue that it shouldn't have ever gotten up to the point that it got to that quickly, but FOMO and hype and, like everyone was just jumping into it. But I have a standing rule that as soon as my mom asks me about something, it's time to like settle down. My mom has not asked about crypto yet. She has not asked about Top Shot yet. But if those come around, I'll know the writing's on the wall when my mom's trying to buy a Top Shot moment.
So we're all here talking about it, and you just said you believe in the project, right? And I think that's probably why we're all here at some level, to some degree. We all believe in the project. And you mentioned CryptoPunks earlier being the original. Is Series 1 the original for, in your mind, is Series 1 the original for Top Shot, or is the best yet to come?
So that's been my personal approach. This, I'll throw extra disclaimers on here. I recognize I had access to Series 1 the way most people didn't. I had the financial flexibility to go very hard into Series 1 where other people haven't been able to. I recognize all of that. But my personal view on this, and I don't love to take a hard stance, but I guess with all those disclaimers, is using those same principles. If we roll forward 5 to 10 years, does Series 2 stand out in any way versus Series 4 or 5 or 3 or 8? And, does something like it being the first All-Star set, for example, if you look at Seeing Stars or Rising Stars or the All-Star set, does that carry water because there wasn't an All-Star set in Series 1? Does that sort of kind of first thing or significant thing in any way matter? Or is it just edition size? And are the edition sizes in Series 2 small enough to where it matters going forward? If we look at something like a Rondo base in Series 1 that's got sub 2,000 edition size, that seems I think pretty attractive from just purely an edition size standpoint. This is scarce, this is rare. In Series 2, that number creeps up to 7,500 to 15,000, and it's really, really difficult to evaluate that in today's lens. I like to take people back to November when, if you look back to the old Discord chats, people were up in arms about players pushing back past 2,000 edition sizes on their bases. And obviously today we look at that and say, that's super scarce. Will the same thing happen in Series 2? So my current comfort level is putting money in Series 1 because I feel like that story, I understand. It holds. We've looked at you look at the Pokemon markets, you look at trading card markets, you look at anything, the first edition, first series, founders edition, whatever you want to call it, there's value there. The edition sizes are extremely low. The user base was small. A lot of the early adopters who are, more diamond-handed than some of the more recent flippers who have come on own those moments. And so they're extremely scarce. And so that's where my comfort is. I personally am willing to pay a premium for Series 1 moments. Series 2, there's a lot of unknowns. It could work out really, really well. You could look at it and say, well, there is no reason that a Giannis in Series 2 should be, 1 60th of the price of a Giannis base in Series 1, and those people might win out. If Series 3 has circulation counts of 600,000 for base moments, then Series 2 suddenly looks really, really, really good. And so I don't think there's a lack of opportunity in Series 2. Just for me, I think there's better downside protection in Series 1 in that it's a closed environment. It's a sealed box. There's nothing new coming. It's completely known how many sets there are going to be. Right?
There's still some stuff in packs that
sure, but we have full information. We know, even though it's not all in circulation, we know exactly what it is and where it is and who owns what. And things, there might be some dynamics. But we have full information. We don't know how many packs are forthcoming in Series 2. We don't know what Series 3 looks like. We don't know how people will view Series 2 versus Series 3. And so I think in answer to your original question, Ray, I do sort of view Series 1 as the founder series, especially because I experienced it. There were 500 people on the platform throughout most of Series 1. It was a whole different ballgame, a different world where people would get into huge fights about whether or not they're paying $30 versus $22 for a moment that today is worth $10,000. And it's crazy to think back. And those stories do carry historical significance. And now, we've been featured in national and international media stories, and Michael Jordan's an investor in Dapper. At this point, it's on the map. It's on the radar. And it's no longer kind of in founder mode. It's now in a different risk reward profile now. And so that's kind of my view. I think that makes a ton of sense. And I think we touched on this a little bit, but like the first mint on Twitter, does account value have a place in collecting? I think it does, right? Like, because even as a little kid, collecting baseball cards, I remember writing by hand in pencil the value of my cards from the Beckett. And back when I was a kid, there wasn't like an online directory where you could go. You literally bought a book and flip through a page, found it, and then you had to keep getting each new edition. So whether it didn't really deter me from wanting to collect, but what it did was and somebody might have answered this on Twitter in reply to the first mint, but it was it helped know where you should place that physical card back then. Oh, does this go in this sleeve or does it go in this sleeve? I think it's human nature to associate value to stuff. And
the Top Shot market is so dynamic right now. You kind of have to back test yourself a little bit with your value. And I don't know that it matters so much that this specific moment is worth this specific amount of money. But the general direction that you're going with your collection, how is that moving as far as evaluation? Because in the end, we're talking about evaluation.
Yeah. So I think it's, again, I mentioned before, I think it's a bit idealistic and, almost purist to say it shouldn't come into play. I think you can make a reasonable argument that it's a bit too prominent right now, that just because of the accessibility of information, because of the blockchain and how public it all is, and because of sites like Add More Funds and the different valuation sites, it's just at your fingertips. It's really, really easy to wake up in the morning and say, let's see how the market moved overnight and check it. But I would also point to the fact that in every collectibles market in the world, in physical market, physical sports cards, in art markets, in every headline, that's the number that comes up. It's not beautiful Da Vinci painting sells. It's, whoa, did you see a $500 million painting sold? It was a Da Vinci, whatever Da Vinci painting it was. Oh, not significant LeBron James career moment sells on Topps card. It's LeBron James card sold for $4 million from his rookie season. The financial side of it is intricately tied into the perceived value of it. And, from, Matt, to your whiskey collection, the 2012 Pappy that you described, will it taste better in 4 years? Maybe, by enough to justify the difference between $2,000 and $5,000 a bottle. Who is to say? But I can tell you will enjoy it more if it's worth $5,000 and it's worth $2,000. There are tons and tons of psychological studies saying that if you pay more for a bottle of wine, even if it tastes the exact same as a cheaper bottle of wine, your endorphins will go off and you'll enjoy that experience more. And they've run tons of tests where they literally put the same exact wine into two different bottles and say, this one costs $10, this one costs $150. Which one tastes better? And uniformly people prefer the $150 version. There's a certain joy in having something that's worth something in other people's mind.
Yeah.
And that comes down to watches, cars, these things that there's no functional value in having a nicer watch outside of just either appreciating it yourself or showing it to other people. It's a loud way of saying I have money, or you just genuinely appreciate the craftsmanship, or in your case, you genuinely appreciate the whiskey aspect of it.
Yeah. I will regularly do blind taste tests just to reset my palate. And just because like, I'm not going to open $5,000 bottles for daily drinkers. Like that's not like, I'm not at the lifestyle level where I need to be to drink $5,000 bottles of whiskey regularly. But I like whiskey better than wine, because with wine, you finish a bottle in one night. So you get a $500 bottle of wine, you're drinking that in a night, where a $500 bottle of whiskey can last a week, a month, 6 months, a year. Like at some point it starts getting a little bit too old with open and whatnot. But like once whiskey's bottled, it doesn't change flavor in the bottle. Like the aging process is done. So like what that bottle of, as long as you store it appropriately and it's not like stored in extreme conditions, right? Like no sunlight, no high, low temperatures back and forth. So it's like that bottle will taste the same now as it will in 10 years, as long as I store it properly. And so like, for me, it's like, well, why would I ever open this? It was like the last, and the reason it holds significant value for 2012 for me is like, just for those that aren't in the know about whiskey. So the Pappy bottles used to get their juice, which is what we call it inside the bottle, from Stitzel Weller. And for the 2012 was the last year that Pappy got their juice from Stitzel Weller. So there was a significant change in production moving forward with different juice, different, ingredients going into it. So some would argue that it was better when Stitzel Weller did it. And that's why the value has gone up on that specifically. But enough about whiskey. I could go on all day about whiskey. I love whiskey.
That's actually a great source that ties into exactly where I was hoping to go, where the collectability of something is intricately tied into the value of it. A story like what you just told, where it's the last year tied to the producer of the juice, or let's go back to the Vince Carter moment. As more NBA fans join and are more familiar with that moment and the significance of it, and the suspension of the 2020 season and Vince Carter's overall career, I love that as a collector, but so will other people, which drives up the value. So typically, value is intricately tied to the collectability of something. And if you love collecting something that's not worth that much, you're probably in the minority of finding it an attractive thing to collect. And so the account value, while it is a financial metric, it also gives you an idea of, am I collecting smart things by the market standards? Am I actually seeing things that are enjoyable from the market standpoint, that from an NBA fan standpoint are exciting or genuinely exciting, or am I in the minority here where it's not that exciting? And so it's a quick litmus test of how am I doing as a collector, how am I doing as an investor, and it's a one size fits all easy number. And so personally, I don't think it's massively problematic. It leads to panics like what we've seen recently, where people see their values going down and therefore they deem their collection to be worthless or the product to be failing. Whereas in physical cards, you might have a binder that there's no easy way to see, okay, this has gone down in 10% in value overnight. And so I think it's a feature and a bug in some ways, where we have I'm always of the view, the more information, the better. And people aren't used to this level of information. They aren't used to seeing something where you can see a 10% value decline overnight and it's a new product, and so they panic. But look, obviously the stock market works like that. You see your stocks move up and down every second. And so people can get comfortable with that concept. I think it's a good thing over time. People need to get used to it, and people will get used to it, but more information, the better, in my view.
We also have to be careful because we don't have a concrete way of evaluating accounts right now.
No, absolutely right.
And that's why, and so not to stick on the account value, but that's one reason we haven't created an account value tool is we don't know how to accurately measure that, and B, there's already a bunch of sites that are doing it, evaluate, moment ranks. Like there's other sites that you can get your intangible.market, I think is still around, but like it's an imperfect measure, but it's a quick barometer. But it does, right now, and I want to switch gears to the market cap conversation because we have a couple other topics and we're already 15 minutes in because it's been a great conversation. I feel like it's flying by, but what role should this play in NBA Top Shot, if any, right? And I put out a tweet on Add More Funds tweet. I'll put it in chat. If you haven't voted, I think it's still open to vote. It has 600 votes currently. So feel free to add your vote. But it said, does market cap have a place in NBA Top Shot? And the answers were yes, critical for users. Yes, but overhyped. No, not needed at all. I don't know if you have some immediate thoughts on where that plays for you, or what kind of role you think market cap should have in Top Shot. And I say this with a grain of salt because I feel like Add More Funds was partly responsible for making market cap a thing in NBA Top Shot. And that's not to toot my own horn. We threw up a lowest ask market cap in the grid, and I think we were one of the first sites to do it. And then all of a sudden it became like, oh, everyone's adding market cap valuations to moments. It's like, did we create a monster? And do we need to start to train our dragon here a little bit and reel that back in?
So I think Top Shot Analytics in the chat here essentially has the same view that I do, where it's a rough gauge. I'm just going to read directly for the overall health of the market. And there are certainly issues with it, and you can poke holes in it, and you can point to the lowest ask being flawed, and you can point to it not capturing anything about historical sales data. You can point to the fact that how do new pack drops affect that, and all these sorts of issues. But I go back to my own personal experience, where the first valuation tool was Intangible Market, Veerman's product, one of the early Top Shot adopters. And even when something like Moments Ranks valuation came out, that does factor in serial number. I still tend to prefer the lowest ask version, not because I think it's more accurate or it's better, but just because it's a barometer that I'm familiar with. And I know that if it's going up relative to where it's been previously, that's generally positive. If it's going down relative to where it was previously, that's generally negative. Even though there's a lot of nuance in there, that means that it's not 100% accurate. It's a read of the health of the market, and it's a relative value kind of thing, where it's a directional thing. So even though there's maybe more sophistication around how you can value your account, for me, it's a quick, easy litmus test. Were the last 48 hours healthy or unhealthy for the market, especially geared towards my collection. And so I think that it does have a place in the ecosystem. I think that people are very wedded to it right now. And
so I want to separate, because you're talking about lowest ask. Are you saying lowest ask has a place, or market cap, or both?
Both. I think both.
Okay.
So I was meaning to use lowest ask and that particular approach to valuation, even though it has its inherent flaws and there's nuance to account valuation. I rely on that to just give me an overall idea of how things are trending, how my account is doing relative to how it was doing 2 or 3 months ago. And I think market cap is similar in that it only tells you so much, and there's a lot of nuance to it, and it's hard to kind of capture how a new pack being added to the ecosystem affects things, where as soon as new packs are dropped and revealed and new moments are added to the pool, that changes the market cap. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for the market? Who knows? People have thrown around the idea that there is a certain amount of capital committed to Top Shot, and as moments are added, it'll just be spread thinner and thinner and thinner over time. And and we need to keep bringing in new people and fuel the fire and all that sort of thing. And so I think it goes back to, again, Top Shot Analytics' comments, where it's directionally accurate and helpful, albeit not perfect. And so I do think it's a helpful metric. It's out there. Present the metric without comment, with a bunch of disclaimers. Here is the total value of all of the moments in Top Shot by lowest ask, factoring in serial, and take from this what you want. But it's more information. And again, I always come back to more information is better. If you don't like it, throw it out.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's the biggest thing. And we'll talk about deals in a moment, because I think that's an even grayer area, where you have people or sites telling you deals on moments, and whether that's okay for the market or not. But something that Duncan's World also tweeted a question about is what helps you determine undervalued moments. And I think this plays directly in with the market cap, and you can look at it. And that's where I think market cap does have a bit of a role, is because you can compare market cap of certain players and certain sets across different things to be able to see. Because in the long term, the market should stabilize, right? So it potentially has opportunity to identify those moments that might be undervalued, and the market just hasn't come around on them. Is that how you approach like identifying like Series 1 or Series 2 potential moment differentials?
So first, just to clarify on the point before, I was kind of talking about global market cap across all of Top Shot. Gotcha. I think by specific moment, I do think market cap is valuable at a greater level than the overall environment. I think that what we are talking about on Plunge's stream is an interesting piece of analysis. It seems as if base moments have a greater market cap than MGLE moments, and legendaries are kind of all over the place. Sometimes cosmics are higher, hollows are lower, lace 'em ups are higher or lower, and I think market cap analysis is really interesting. It's a and so I do think that's important. And so in terms of identifying undervalued moments myself, what I try and do, and it's not the easiest thing, is figure out where I think the market is as close as we have today to mature. And so I think probably just because of how long they've been around longer than anything else, and they're the most liquid. Series 1 base moments to me are the most mature market. And so what I try and use that for is if I find comparable plays that have roughly comparable edition sizes, you can get a relative gauge of how the market sees two players. So let's just say Kyrie Irving and James Harden each have first moment bases in Series 1 that have 1,000 total edition size. And neither of them is a particularly special play. And let's just say, for argument's sake, I don't know where it is today, that James Harden's is at $2,000 and Kyrie Irving's is at $1,000. And the only difference between the two is the player itself. And so that means you can glean pretty reasonably the market views James Harden as more valuable than Kyrie Irving. It's a more liquid market. We've seen a lot of transactions. There's no challenges involved in any way in Series 1 anymore. And so that's just the market saying we view James Harden as approximately double as valuable as Kyrie Irving. Then we fast forward to this season, and we see there are, and I'm just using representative examples, two 7,500 edition size moments of James Harden and Kyrie Irving, and they're priced the same. And so the question is James Harden too cheap, or is Kyrie Irving too expensive? Because we know the market values Kyrie Irving and James Harden differently. Is there something special about this play that means that Kyrie Irving should have a premium on him? Did he recently get traded, so he's not going to have as many Nets moments before? Something like that. And try and weigh in all these different factors and say, okay, it appears there's an inefficiency here. I think there's an inefficiency because it's a brand new pack and the market hasn't yet found its footing. I think there's an inefficiency because people aren't paying attention. I think actually when I dig into this, there's actually only one listing at, let's call it $400, and there's actually then a jump to $800, which is about where I think the market should be. And I try and drill down on that basis, where basically use relative valuation from more mature products to apply that to less mature markets.
No, I think that makes a ton of sense. And I know we're coming up on the hour mark. We had a couple more topics to get through and some giveaways that we're going to fire through quickly. It is Easter Sunday, and I know we all have some family plans this afternoon to attend to. Please like and subscribe if you're still hanging with us. Thank you. Like, subscribe, follow all of these folks on Twitter. The links are in the description on YouTube for all of our Twitter follows. One of the things that I also tweeted about, and I said maybe it's a hot take, but deals. Should sites tell you if something is a deal or not, and what implications does that bring? Because by insinuating a deal, it's like, is it a deal based on current market? Are you saying it's a deal because you can make a profit? Like, what is the reason for saying something's a deal? And should sites even be telling you that? Because, whether or not it's a market, whether it's a collectible, people are treating it like it's a market, and people are wanting to, everyone wants to make money. They don't want to just invest. Like, if you're making this as an investment, you don't want to like spend $1,000 and have that be worth $100, right? Like, nobody wants that. So like when a site tells you, hey, this is a deal, and like there's, a link to purchase it right there, does that make it more like they're telling you, go buy this, you'll make money? or is there proper verbiage in place where you could highlight, hey, this is a deal because of XYZ. You're not guaranteed to make money, but this is a deal based on these parameters we've set.
So I think that last point's exactly right. I think if they say we define a deal as if it's greater than 10% below the last 12 sales over the last 7 days or whatever you're going to say, then we define it as a deal. It becomes a 2-flame deal at this parameter. It becomes a 3-flame deal at this parameter. Do with that information what you want. Here are some disclaimers that there are sometimes dapper balance transfers that play into sales. There are sometimes, maybe one buyer who comes and cleans up the floor that may not be representative of the overall market view. And as long as you have disclosures and disclaimers, again, any information is better. I think in an ideal world, the way it would work is you could basically say, I want to be flagged anytime the following parameters are met. And like for me, one thing that I've talked about a few times that I would want to look at is if an MGLE market cap falls below, let's call it 50% of a base market cap in Series 1 for both the first moments, I want to get like an email notification, or I want to know if I go to the website and go to my favorite deals or something like that, that the parameters are preset and I can just say, okay, these 6 moments currently fulfill or meet the deal that I outlined, and so I'm going to act on that. But that's something that I can define. If it's the platform defining it, I do think the algorithm should be shared effectively. Otherwise, it calls into question kind of, what is it? What am I looking at? Can this be manipulated in some way that presents it as a deal when it's not actually a deal? And any algorithm can be manipulated. So as long as you put the proper disclaimers and explanations there, I think it's a useful tool.
Yeah, because I think
Go ahead.
I was going to say, we saw like with the Kevin Durant $69,420, like 70+% of listings going up for that price. It triggered something in Live Token's algorithm that started saying that was a deal. And it's like, well, I think we can all agree that was not a deal to purchase that moment for $69,000.
Well, depends who you ask.
Anyone did. I don't think anyone did.
For the meme.
Yeah. So the question is, did they update their site specifically to make that like, hey, let's throw that as a deal just to like put fuel on this? Because I don't think anyone in their right mind would have purchased that. But it begs, like, it goes into what you're saying, like algorithms, if they're set up and people at least understand how that's being created, they can understand if there's some market manipulation, making something appear as a deal versus just show up there. I don't think, and it starts getting a little bit more blurry when it's like a $700 or $800 moment, because that is within reason for some folks. And it looks like, oh, this could be potential. But like when it's phrased in a way, and one of the Twitter accounts who tweets out Top Shot alerts actually replied to my tweet saying he or she, I don't know, is changing or whatever pronoun they go by, is changing the automated tweet language behind alerts. Cause like it was saying like, oh, rare, Andre Iguodala, I'm terrible at names, is selling for 375, listing at 433, yields X in profit. And so they were presenting it as you could make profit from it. And so they reworded it to say, is X% lower than the next lowest ask, which is a more general statement versus saying this is profit, because it might not be profit, right?
Yeah,
Like
I think presentation,
all that.
Yeah, presentation's super important, and I think it's always important to remember there are new and vulnerable people here. There are language barriers. There are people who don't know basketball, who wouldn't have the gut feel and know that maybe an Andre Iguodala moment shouldn't trade for the same thing as a Steph Curry moment. And that may seem obvious or memeable or laughable to NBA fans, but for someone who's just trying out the platform, it may not be as obvious. Or for someone who it's their first day on the platform. And so I do think language is important. But again, interesting that it keeps coming back to this point. I'm all about more information as long as it's presented in a fair and reasonable way. And as long as the disclaimers are there saying, for example, we had this issue very, very early on with intangible market environment where certain moments, especially legendary moments, saw incredible jumps at one point. The Derrick Rose from the top moment, the lowest ask jumped to, as I think, $250,000 at some point. And so Veerman put a disclaimer at the top of his valuation tool saying lowest ask has the flaw that it may over-represent the value of your holdings. Here's one example. Derrick Rose from the top went up to $240,000. The last sale it had was at $12,000 or something like that. And then he said, that he had average sales from inception to present day. And he said the issue with this is a lot of, let's call it the Luka first moment base from Series 1 used to trade for $15 or whatever it is. Now it trades for a few $1,000s, so the average sales price isn't representative. And he just kind of used as many examples as he could to highlight the issues with lowest ask, that it doesn't have number ones and jersey numbers and last mints factored in, and lowest ask issues and average sale issues, to present the information and provide as much information as he could while guarding against the potential pitfalls of it. And obviously there will be unintended consequences where people make poor decisions on that basis. But I do think at some point, there is some onus on the buyer that if someone's going to put $700 out there, at least read the whole page that you're basing your decision off of. And so, I think presentation is important. It's really important to make sure no one's taken advantage of, no one who's vulnerable makes bad decisions here. No one's making regrettable decisions. No one's thinking something's a guaranteed profit when it's not. But I don't think a deals page, or call it what you want, is a bad thing necessarily, especially when it's described how they come up with their list.
I think on the valuation side of it too, like something we're exploring is and something we've always had in our sales transaction charts is remove outliers function. I think Evaluate has that on their site now too. And what that does is it removes those like really high sales that are outside of it. I don't know how they calculate outliers. I know how we do it. And it helps prevent those like ones that are way up at the top, like that either are like number one jersey number, or those transferring monies or offsite sales, something that's happened there, or, like whatever it is. And so I think there's opportunity to take last 5 days, 7 days, whatever of that average sales volume with outliers removed, and put that on an account valuation to get a closer representation of what a true account value might be, because those are actual sales, right? And it's still going to be flawed. Because it's not going to capture any movements, but it might be better than what we have today for market cap. It might be better for account valuations. There might be ways to improve market cap. Instead of lowest ask, we're looking at actual sales volumes with outliers removed. We should, and we remove outliers on the bottom end and the top end. It's not necessarily just like, we're not doing it on one side only. So it's like, it gives a more true, realistic view of what's potentially happening in the market. And I think using that for deals too could be helpful, quote unquote deals, whatever you want to call them. And I think I've been hesitant to push forward with it because I'm trying to think like, how do we long-term support this and really make it a valuable tool versus just something that flippers are going to use. And, I want to support the community as best as we can. And I think, it'd be easy for us to throw out a lot of these tools, but we're really trying to think through it and how we can do it to best impact the community versus just do it.
Yeah, I agree. I also think an important point here is that we are, 9 months in. So you mentioned early on that it launched in July. Technically, the first pack drop was actually June 15th. Last year. And so the product's been around for 9.5 months at this point. I think that a lot of the issues we're talking about go away in a more liquid and mature market. Not go away, but are reduced. We'll call it, where we're at more of an equilibrium, where we don't see increases and drops of overall moment values by 15% in a given day, where there's normal movements, more like the stock market on large cap stocks, where we're seeing 1 to 3% movements per day, and that's more of a norm. And that we have a more efficient market, and that the last 7-day transactions don't drastically differ from the last 30 days or the last 45 days. And, maybe for a player who has suddenly picked up his scoring average, you might see someone stand out as an outlier in that sense. But most players will be in a pretty narrow band. And so I think these things will be solved over time. I think Moments Rank has taken an interesting approach where they've basically banded different serial numbers. They've assigned a premium to number ones, to jerseys, to last mints, to I think like number 2, 3, 4, and 5. I don't know exactly what their algorithm does. And I think that it's still has its issues. It doesn't capture all nuance, but it's an interesting step in the direction of where I think a sophisticated account valuation tool could end up.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, so we're about 10 minutes over the hour. We had one more topic that I did want to list out, and that was around challenges. So there's been a lot of talk about challenges. We actually rolled out recently the ability to look at past challenges and current challenges, and we have a new challenge grid coming specifically where you can deep dive into each challenge and each moment and see those types of things. That's coming in the future. We're looking at adding more resources instead of add more funds, but we're looking at adding resources to the team so that way we can roll out tools quicker and faster and keep up with this ever-changing market. I feel like we've done a pretty good job so far, but I think we'll potentially be able to do a lot better once we have those resources. But challenges in general, are they broken? Does anything need to change? Or do we just need to give the market time to correct itself and challenges will get to a place where they're meant to be?
So, look, I think that, again, like I was saying, it's a very early stage market here. I think eventually the market will reach a greater level of equilibrium and efficiency. And so right now, I think challenges are at an interesting stage. Early on in the early days, challenges were obvious to participate in every single time. They were plus EV. It was almost as if the reward itself was either undervalued or almost ignored entirely. And so it was a very, very easy way to increase your account value, setting aside the fun. And so I think that as new people join the platform, it was something that was talked about a lot. It's something that's highlighted quite a bit by Dapper. And so it's a fun thing for new people to say, hey, I have these 9 moments, and if I hold them, or 12 moments or whatever it is, at a certain time or deadline, I will be airdropped a new moment with a random serial number. And so the appeal of that for a novice is you get a free card, and I'll put free in quotes importantly, and it can be a much better serial number than you would reasonably have a shot at otherwise. If you want a real shot or a shot at a number 1 or a jersey number or a top 10 or something like that, challenges are one of your best ways to do it. Challenges in packs, obviously, unless you want to really pay a significant premium. And so I think that people didn't understand the dynamic that the math that's always outlined here should be something along the lines of the underlying components of a challenge should be roughly equivalent to the challenge reward. Before the challenge, the underlying moments before the challenge should be roughly equivalent to the underlying moments after the challenge plus the reward itself. The reward itself isn't the easiest calculation because it has to be the expected value of the overall moment, which factors in the premium numbers, the number 1s, the jerseys, the last minutes, the top 10s, anything like that, not just the market price low. But that equation should be roughly equivalent. If it's not, you're either better off buying every single challenge before the challenge or not participating in the challenge and buying all the underlying moments after the challenge. And because of that, I think theoretically the challenges will reach an equilibrium where that equation holds true, or somewhere in that neighborhood it holds true. Now, the non-financial side of it is that challenges are fun, as I described. It's fun to get airdropped a moment. It gives you an opportunity to get a super attractive serial that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get. It's a fun way for collectors to be a part of something, to do it together. There are unknowns that make it difficult to price a challenge reward before a challenge reward actually comes out. And so I don't think it's broken. I think people ask that question because they've done poorly on it recently. But what's going to happen is people who have been burned by challenges won't participate going forward, and we'll see challenges become cheaper to participate in, and eventually it'll reach that sort of equilibrium. And as I've mentioned, if it doesn't, more people will get burned and more people will step away, and then it will in the future. If they become attractive again, more people will step into it. I mean, today, for example, I've heard from 3 different people, hey, what do you think about the Seeing Stars LeBron challenge? I mean, that's come down so much. Here's how I'm seeing the math. Does this make sense to you? And that's what happens. It goes up and gets too expensive and people get burned, and then it comes back down and gets too cheap and people buy, and eventually it'll find its equilibrium. And so I don't think broken is the appropriate word. I think it's a fun concept. I think it's something that Dapper maybe blows up a little more than they should and draws more attention to than they should. It's just a component of the platform, and people can do it if they enjoy it and think it's a worthwhile risk, or really want the reward, or want to complete the challenge, or want the challenge completion to be part of their collection. When it goes to previously completed challenges, you can say, look, I've completed 24 challenges in my account. That's a pretty cool account. But
I think you hit the nail on the head. Some people got burned by them, and then there were 5 challenges active in the middle of a pretty massive bear market, and it's soured people. But I don't think it has a whole lot to do with the challenge. I think it has to do with how people have been impacted by the challenge. But you might have been impacted in that way anyway. From my perspective, the challenges are probably a necessary market externality. With everything else that we've got, you need something to kind of, I don't know, pump some momentum into the marketplace every now and then. And it's too bad that there were 5 of them in the middle of a bear market, but just as well could have been a bull market.
Yeah, I agree.
I think this is a good idea here. Like
my only issue with this idea, so a lot of people have said the challenge is under reward collectors, but I think that's a different way of saying I haven't made money on the challenge. And so if you make the reward better, then people will buy the components more. If you suddenly say the reward's not a LeBron seeing stars, it's a LeBron seeing stars plus a pair of LeBron sneakers, whatever, weird example, we'll mail it to your home. People will pay more for the underlying moments, and they'll bid it up. And then they might still get burned, but eventually the market just kind of find a fair price. And if they basically say, "Hey, everyone who completes the challenge, we're going to reward you more than we told you what we were going to before," the price goes up, and it'll happen kind of in both directions. And so I don't think the solve for it is to give people more for solving the challenge. That'll just kind of prolong the issue and maybe lead to people getting burned again because they have to pay more for the challenge then and. Whatever. It's a market. Yeah, people are going to hammer away the expected value. That's the way a market works. If there's obvious expected value, people buy. If they get burned, people don't buy, and it's going to reach equilibrium one way or the other.
It's the same concern I have with the badges. I really hope they don't overdo it with the badges. I want the badges to mean something.
I agree. And I actually think that's something that's an interesting opportunity right now. The market seems to have soured on badges because so many moments today have badges. And when we use my favorite thing of let's fast forward 10 years to the year 2031, it's going to be a fraction of moments that have badges. It's going to be the rookies from the future years, and for everything from season 1 and season 2 and Klay Thompson in series 3. And that's going to be it, basically. And I think that's a really interesting thing. And it's a bit short-sighted of people to be upset about how many badges are on moments today, 9 months into the platform's existence.
So do you think first Top Shot moment will go away, or are you just applying that to rookies moving forward?
What do you mean go away?
So you said that it'll only be a fraction. It'll only be rookies and the series 1 and 2.
Yeah. No, I don't think I don't think it's going to go away. I think basically it's only going to apply to rookies going forward. All current players, anyone who's not a rookie today, their first moments in existence already. So there's not going to be any future first moments for them. So any new Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Steph Curry, Giannis moments won't have the first moment tag, but a huge portion of the existing moment base, what we'll call it, do have first moments just because it's brand new. And so a lot of moments from the series 1 did, especially because they reused plays. And going forward, though, almost all first moments will be from rookies, with some rare exceptions being Klay Thompson, and I don't know if there's anyone else who's a current active player who's not a rookie who hasn't had a first moment yet.
Or run it back moments could potentially be a Top Shot debut.
But they won't be called first moments. They might be from rookie seasons, but they won't be first moments.
Well, what if they?
For like retired players, players.
If they do a run it back of someone who's not on the site currently.
You
potentially have a Top Shot debut, but I do think
it's a diminishing portion of moments. Yeah.
Yeah, over time the percentage will go out. I would love to see a buzzer beater badge. I think, or maybe that's just a moment type instead of
will it only apply to end of game, buzzer beater at the end of a quarter?
Winner. Maybe it's game winner. Maybe
So,
game winner badges.
the set for the win was all buzzer beaters in Series 1. That was a dedicated set to buzzer beaters.
But like they could do that like over time, just like it could be a random game throughout the year. But like imagine like the Kawhi Leonard game in the playoffs. Like that would be an epic moment. I hope that makes its way to Top Shot. I would want.
I think it will.
And collect it. That's one that I would want hands down.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think everything I just said was a long way of saying that challenges, like the rest of the market, like any market, will find an equilibrium. And right now they're probably a bit overblown. It's hard to analyze it without factoring in what Ray highlighted, that it's a bear market right now. Everything's going down right now. So if you bought something 2 weeks ago in advance of a challenge that ended yesterday, you're probably going to get a bit hurt. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that really covered the topics we had to talk about an hour and 20 minutes. Right within that hour to hour and a half time frame we try to stay within. Really appreciate you coming on, Mike, and chatting with us and giving us your perspective on these topics. Thank you for spending a portion of your Easter Sunday with us and stuffing our Easter baskets. You're welcome to stay on while we do the subscription giveaways, but I know you mentioned you had some stuff to get to this afternoon. So if you have to head out, completely understand. We will, I'm sure we'll chat again and probably have you on for a future thing. Real quick, do you own a digital pony yet?
So I don't. I mean, part of the issue for me personally is I've spent the last 6 months, or since September, I guess 7 months at this point, spending a lot of time on Top Shot, on NFTs, on everything else, and especially as the world is sort of opening back up, and seeing friends who I haven't seen in a long time, and picking up on sports again, and doing hobbies and whatnot. My time is more constrained, and it's been kind of a whirlwind of a 6 to 7 months right now, where my mind is spinning, my brain is mush, and I'm trying hard not to add new things that may take over my mind. I like to get very deep into things that I do, like I did with Top Shot, and so I don't think I would half-ass a Zed Run attempt. And it's a pretty involved platform. There's breeding, there's racing, there's different race lengths, there's different race conditions, there's a lot of things, and so I've kind of consciously made the decision to stay away in the interest of my family life, my personal life, my sanity, and my bankroll.
Adrian wants to know if you ended up getting a man's coin.
I did end up getting a man's coin. If you were watching, Carlini, one of the early Top Shot adopters, was nice.
I got the physical one. I don't have the first edition numbered. It's the man's coin light version. But I still have one. I keep it here. It's like my fidget paperweight.
I love it. So the new drop is going to come with physical versions, actually. And does yours have a backwards $sign on it, by the way?
It might just be the way my camera.
Well, Mans was saying the originals have backwards $signs. But anyway, so I did end up getting one.
These were the light versions. This wasn't the one that was numbered through 69.
Okay, got it.
I didn't befriend Manzanelli in time to get one of those, but he was nice enough to send me a light version.
Nice. So I did end up getting one. Fortunately, I think there are a few still out there. If anyone else wants to, it should be a fun time. Maybe we can pull some people up into Club Top Shot who are coin holders.
For sure. I put a link to the Zed Run in the chat. If anyone wants to check it out, they can. I don't know enough about it either. I started saying oh, do I buy a horse? I'm sure certain horse, and I watched a couple races because what else was there to do? And I saw this one horse just the last 600 meters just fully separate himself. So I'm like, is that a breed thing? Is that a characteristic? Should that horse only race in long races because it's going to have a unique advantage of finishing stronger? And I was like, nope, can't go down that rabbit hole.
Right. That's exactly where I was. I was like, I can't, and I know everyone else will, so I won't be able to compete if I don't. And Matt and Ray, I know you guys are about to get your giveaway. I want to spend 30 seconds hitting kind of two questions that a few people have asked here, which is one, marketing, and two, withdrawals. And so I think these two and other comparable kind of things, my view on this is it's coming. They've 100x the user base in a 2 or 3 month period right now. They are completely underwater. They are backed up. You can make a very reasonable argument they screwed up by not being ready for this, but it is what it is. They've just raised $300 million. They are completely aligned with the NBA. They've raised money from Michael Jordan and huge name venture capital firms. They are certainly going to get withdrawals figured out. It's a support issue. It's a regulatory and compliance issue. It'll get there. The marketing will come when they're ready. The message that they've been delivering is we're not ready, that we don't have withdrawals ready. The platform's not ready. The foundation's not ready. The tech isn't there right now. When it is ready, the world is our oyster. We're going to do anything with this. We're going to have QR codes on the screen during NBA games. We're going to have NBA arena giveaways where if you're there, you don't get a bobblehead, you get a moment if you enter the game. It's the potential is limitless right now, and I would just encourage everyone, to the extent you have the financial capability to do so, be patient here. They have the setup here to build and capitalize on a revolutionary product. And yes, there will be short-term growing pains. It's not that fun right now to watch account values go down. It's not that enjoyable to go to the platform right now. There's not that much to do, but they're adding utility. They will market. They will tap into international markets. They will use the NBA marketing machine. And I feel I don't want people to get burned by getting out now when there's so many bright things ahead of us. And I know people don't like to hear this from me because obviously I stand to benefit from the platform doing well, but you can just look at my account's actions. I'm not selling anything. I couldn't be more confident that this has an extremely bright and revolutionary future. And Matt, I think where you were going is their recent hire, the NFL VP of Feldman. Yeah, I actually chatted with him on a call yesterday. He reached out to myself and a few other collectors, and I'm sure he'll make the rounds on content creators and analytical platforms, but he's just trying to get a feel kind of for where everyone is, what they want from the platform, where they see things going. But the future to me seems extremely bright. And yes, there are growing pains, and yes, they could have done a lot of things better, especially on the communication side in the short term. And they know they've screwed up a little bit, but I still think the future is bright. And I don't want people to kind of lose sight of that and sell out earlier than they would have otherwise for these short-term issues.
Yeah, no, I think you make some good points. And for those watching, I'm wearing a limited edition run. I can't even remember. Maybe we had like 40 of these made like a few years ago. It says "Get Rich or Deposit Trying," and then Deposit has the money bag icon that we use on Twitter and our social icons. I know Pete Overzet likes to say he's the deposit king, but we've been sitting on the deposit screen for 4 years now, and it plays well to a variety of things. So everyone wants to make money and do all that kind of stuff. So I do see potential. Obviously, we wouldn't be investing our time or resources into Top Shot Tools if we didn't think it was going to be around for the long term. And I think, like you even saw, like Evaluate.Market, they raised a decent chunk of change. And I'm sure you're going to start seeing some other analytical sites, come out there. I wouldn't bet against Bales trying to do something, in the NFT space for tools. And then obviously we're trying to add resources as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. We've seen the first, it's almost like that Bitcoin spike up to like 20,000. Then it like went back down and like leveled out for a while. And then we saw another big bull run. So like to your point earlier, when you look at this, like a few years from now, this peak might not even look like a peak. Hopefully for all those of us that are joining in, but speculation can be a dangerous drug. So use that sparingly, and always remember that this is not financial advice.
I think that's extremely prudent what you said at the end. Be very careful. It is speculative. It could all come crashing down. I'm just sharing my personal views and why I choose not to sell.
Yeah, no, for sure. And appreciate that insight. We're going to go ahead and do a spin of names. We're going to do three. What did I say in the email?
So how many people are in this?
There are only There's only 30 people. So
Oh, wow.
that entered for the subscription. So I think what we could do is we could do 2 monthly and 1 annual. Give away 2 monthly coupons and an annual coupon. And so, like, being a paid supporter, and Sonia mentioned in chat to go over tools and stuff like that in the future, like we did on Plunge's show. I think that was extremely valuable, where we could like dive and see how we could use the stuff. We'll do one of those again on our channel where we can go super in depth. But like, being a premium supporter, we have more than Top Shot tools. So I know a lot of you are here for Top Shot. This is living for the moment and a specific Top Shot show, but we do have MLB tools, which is currently kicked off. We have NFL tools. We have NBA tools. We have, some of the best tools in the industry around these sports for analytics. And so being a supporter package gives you access to everything, gives you access to dark mode as well, that you can turn on, which is just, whatever. We just figure we give it to supporters. And in the future, to help support us, there will be ads on the site. So being a supporter makes your viewing experience ad free as well. But allows you to export data. It allows you to access new features sooner than everyone else. So that's kind of what the premium package does, or the supporter package on Add More Fun. So that's what we're going to give away here. I'm going to go ahead and add it. There we go. Oh, look, with 3 people in sharing a screen, we can actually put the banner on.
Nice.
Kind of covers me a little bit, but that's okay. You guys don't want to see me anyways. All right. So first 2 will be monthly, and then the third person will be the annual winner. And if you already have an annual, we can talk about refunding your previous purchase. Or if you already have a monthly package, we can talk about refunding your most recent monthly payment as well. But here we go. First one. Oh, I didn't do sound, did I? All right. So Joe.
Congrats, Joe.
Nice work. You will be removed.
Ouch.
Well, removed from the next
them out.
giveaway. Let me write this down so I don't forget the winners. So we got Joe, and we'll reach out. I have your AMF. If you're on AMF, that's great. If you're not, you'll obviously need to sign up to access supporter features. DM us on Twitter, or you can reach out to me, matt@addmorefunds.com, 1T, MAT @addmorefunds.com. That's my email. Please don't go posting it on Craigslist for puppies and stuff like that. But you can reach out there or Twitter, whichever you prefer. All right. Next one. All right. Meeks,
It's
not nice. Congrats. So you 2 are the monthly winners. And just writing this down so I don't forget. All right, here we go for the annual. And then in the future, we'll do some moment giveaways, but we didn't want to do a moment giveaway and have to hold on to it for a week. Craig. All right, Craig. Congratulations. That doesn't look terrible, even with 3 of us. But again, thank you guys for tuning in. Like, subscribe. Really appreciate you coming on mic and chatting with us for an hour and a half.
For sure.
We're always open to conversations, and if there's things you guys want to see, we have a feedback board on the site to add features, suggestions. We're always looking to improve the experience and the data that we make available. You can sign up with the link below in the description. Any final parting words, Ray, Mike?
So we've talked about it before, about how so much happens in a Top Shot week. It's really like an Earth month. So in between shows, we've started doing Twitter Spaces. So look out for those. We have pretty interesting conversations, I'd say, about the market or life in general.
Specific. Those are just whatever comes up.
Even my wife even gets involved, so you guys can all kind of pile in.
My wife chooses to remain behind the scenes.
Same here. Same here.
I thought mine would too, but she had a look on her face the last time we did one where she was excited to hop in. But
So I just want to say, Matt and Ray, thank you very much for having me on. I'm a big fan of AMF. I think it's a fantastic platform, and very excited to have this sort of conversation with you guys. Happy Easter to everyone. And my parting words will, I've spoken a lot about the bull cases of the platform and the excitement that I have personally and the future that I see. But of course, there is risk inherent here. Be very careful, be patient, educate yourself as much as you can. Don't try and make a quick buck here. Make sure you're having fun, collect moments you actually like, and just be careful. It's risky, it's speculative, it's a brand new market, and just be careful out there and ensure that you're having fun. You're not lying in bed at night thinking, should I have done that? Should I have not done that? And hiding things from your family members and all that good stuff. Just be careful, have a good time, enjoy the platform. And try not to check your account value every 20 minutes. It can be hard. It can be hard not to, but make sure you're still having fun out there.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Until next week, we'll see you then. Thanks for tuning in.
Very cool. Thanks.
Living for the moment.